Hello, guys and gals. This is going to be different from all the videos I have made so far. This is going to be drastically different. All the videos that I made are what ifs of Deku and stories that I made on my own. This video, on the other hand, is going to be different. I am going to read to y'all The City of Bones, or The Mortal Instruments, City of Bones, by Cassandra Clare. I absolutely love this series so much, The Mortal Instruments. I've said on my Discord and a few others about my idea of doing a what if Deku was a shadow hunter. And those that know about shadow hunters and the Mortal Instruments books and the show, there was a movie about the Mortal Instruments, City of Bones, but I don't want to talk about that. I'm mainly focusing just on the books. I'm going to read to you Book 1, The City of Bones. This will be part 1 to this Book 1. I'm going to make this video around the same amount of time that I make my usual videos. So I'm going to read to y'all the book for at least 40 to 50 minutes. And I really hope that y'all like this. Even though this is drastically different from my usual videos, I hope you love and support what I'm doing right now, because I absolutely love this series. And if y'all want, I got another book series that I really like, and I'll totally read to y'all about that book. I got 2 books, in fact. After I'm done with The City of Bones, I can start with book 2 of The Mortal Instruments, City of Ash. I think that's what it's called. It's been a while since I read the Mortal Instrument books. That's why I'm wanting to do something different. I wanted to read The City of Bones or the Mortal Instrument books for a while to re-educate myself on what happened in the story, because I am going to make what if Deku was a shadow hunter in the future, and this could just be a countdown. Pretty much all the Mortal Instrument books that I'll read, and I'll read the extra ones. After the Mortal Instrument books, there is Clockwork and the Lost Artifacts. I'll read those 2 because I absolutely love those 2 stories after the Mortal Instruments. So yeah, I hope y'all absolutely love and support this series. And without further ado, I will... Oh, and before I roll my intro out, I will say my next video will be what if Deku had neon. I'm going to continue that series, and I am not going to go back on my word. I'm going to continue that series until it's done. It's just things have happened in my life. Things are happening and shit. Just time is going by fast. That's all I can really say. But yeah, thank y'all for supporting my channel so far, and I hope you like and subscribe. Really like these videos. It really helps me know that y'all support what I do. And tell me how you feel in the comment section. This is drastically different from what I usually do, and I know that. I just want to experiment a little bit on what y'all like. And I won't be stuttering much on the story, because I will be reading it out loud pretty much to y'all and all that. So because I haven't read this story in a while, I am relearning this this new world yet again for myself. And those of y'all that have not read the Mortal Instrument books, I recommend you buying them. If you don't feel like you have the time to buy them, watch Shadow Hunters on I think it is on Hulu, or I don't think it's on HBO. I think it's on Hulu. Yeah, Shadowhunters is on Hulu, pretty sure. Hulu Plus, I think. Yeah. But yeah. Without further ado, I will roll that fucking intro out. Now, before I start reading, I do not own nor have the rights to this book. The book's author's name is Cassandra Clare, as you can see on the picture. So, and this picture is the cover of City of Bones. So, yeah. Now, let's start with the book. Now, shall we? Now, Chapter 1, Pandemonium. You've got to be kidding me, the bouncer said, folding his arms across his massive chest. He stared down at the boy in the red zip-up jacket and shook his shaved head. You can't bring that in here. The 50 or so teenagers in line outside of the Pandemonium Club leaned forward to eavesdrop. It was a long wait to get into the old ages club, especially on a Sunday, and not much generally happens in line. The bouncers were fierce and would come down instantly on anyone who looked like they were going to start trouble. The 15-year-old Clary Frey, standing in line with her best friend, Simon, leaned forward along with everyone else, hoping for some excitement. Oh, come on, the kid hosted the thing up over his head. It looked like a wooden beam pointed at one end. It's part of my costume. The bouncer raised an eyebrow. Which is what? The boy grinned. He was normal enough looking, Clary thought, for a Pandemonium. He had electric, blue-eyed hair that stuck up around his head like the tentacles of a startled octopus. But no elaborate facial tattoos or big metal bars through his ears or lips. I'm a vampire hunter. He pushed down on the wooden thing. It was bent as easily as the blade of grass, bending sideways. It's fake. Foam rubber. See? The boy's white eyes were way too bright a green, Clary noticed. The color of antifreeze. Spring grass. Color contact lenses, probably. The bouncer shrugged, broadly bored. Whatever. Go on in. The boy slid past him, quick as an eel. Clary liked the tilt to his shoulders, the way he tossed his hair as he went. There was a word from him that her mother would have used, and she wasn't. You thought he was cute, said Simon, sounding resigned, didn't you? Clary dug her elbows into his ribs, but didn't answer. Inside the club was full of ice-dry smoke. Colored lights played over the dance floor, turning it into a multicolored fairyland of blues and acid greens, the pink and golds. The boy in the red jacket stroked the long razor-sharp blade in his hands, an auto smile playing over his lips. It had been so easy. A little bit of glamour on the blade to make it look harmless, another glamour on the eyes, and the moment the bouncer looked straight at him, he was in. Of course, he could probably have gone by without all that trouble, but it was part of the fun, fooling the Mundies, doing it all out in the open, right in front of them, getting off on the blank looks on their sheep-like faces. Not that the humans didn't have their uses. The boy's green eyes scanned the dance floor, where slender limbs, clad in scraps of silk and black leather, appeared and disappeared inside the revolving columns of smoke as the Mundies danced. Girls tossed their long hair, boys swung their leather-clad hips, and bare skin glittering with sweat. Vitality just poured off of them, waves of energy that filled him with a drunken dizziness. His lips curled. They didn't know how lucky they were. They didn't know what it was like to eke out life in a dead world, where the sun hung limp in the sky like a burned cinder. Their lives burned as brightly as candle flames, and were as easily to snuff out. His hands tightened on the blade he carried, and he had begun to step out into the dance floor when a girl broke away from the mass of dancers and began walking towards him. He stared at her. She was beautiful for a human. Long hair, nearly the precise color of black ink, charcoal eyes, floor-length white gown, the kind women used to wear when this world was younger. Lace sleeves belled around her slim arms. Around her neck was a thick silver chain on which hung a dark red pendant the size of a baby's fist. He only had to narrow his eyes to know that it was real and precious. His mouth started to water as she neared him. Vital energy pulsed from her blood like an open wound. She smiled, passing him, beckoning with her eyes. He turned to follow her, tasting the phantasm sizzle of her death on his lips. It was always easy. He could already feel the power of her evaporating life coursing through his veins like fire. Humans were so stupid. They had something so precious, and they barely safeguarded at all. They threw away their lives for money, for packs of powder, for a stranger's charming smile. The girl was a pale ghost, retreating through the colored smoke. She reached the wall and turned, bunching her skirt up in her hands, lifting it as she grinned at him. Under the skirt, she was wearing thigh-high boots. He sauntered up to her, his skin prickling with her nearness. Up close, she wasn't so perfect. He could see the mascara smudged under her eyes, the sweat sticking her hair to her neck. He could smell her mortality, the sweet rot of corruption. Got you, he thought. A cool smile curled her lips. She moved to the side, and he could see that she was leaning against a closed door. No admittance, storage, was scrawled across it in red paint. She reached behind her for the knob, turned it, slid inside. He caught a glimpse of stacked boxes, tangled wiring, a storage room. He glanced behind him. No one was looking. So much the better if she wanted privacy. He slipped into the room after her, unaware that he was being followed. So, Simon said, Pretty good music, eh? Clary didn't reply. They were dancing for what passed for it. A lot of swaying back and forth with occasional lunges toward the floor as if one of them had dropped a contact lens, and a space between a group of teenage boys in metallic corsets and young Asian couple who were making out passionately, their colored hair extensions tangled together like vines. A boy with lip piercing and a teddy bear backpack was handing out free tablets of herbal ecstasy, his parachute pants flapping in the breeze from the wind machine. Clary wasn't paying much attention to their immediate surroundings. Her eyes were on the blue-haired boy who talked his way into the club. He was prowling around the club as if he was looking for something. There was something about the way he moved that reminded her of something. I, for one, Simon went on, am enjoying myself immensely. This seemed unlikely. Simon, as always, stuck out at the club like a sore thumb, in jeans and an old t-shirt that said Made in Brooklyn across the front. His freshly scrubbed hair was dark brown instead of green or pink, and his glasses perched crookedly on the end of his nose. He looked less as if he were contemplating the powers of darkness and more as if he were on his way to chess club. Clary knew perfectly well that he came to Pandemonium with her only because she liked it, that he thought it was boring. She wasn't even sure why she liked it. The clothes, the music, made it like a dream, someone else's life, not her boring real life at all. But she was always too shy to talk to anyone but Simon. The blue-haired boy was making his way off the dance floor. He looked a little lost, as if he hadn't found whom he was looking for. Clary wondered what would happen if she went up and introduced herself, offered to show him around. Maybe he'd just stare at her, or maybe he was shy too. Maybe he'd be grateful and pleased, and try not to show it, the way boys did. But she'd know, maybe. The blue-haired boy straightened up suddenly, snapping to attention like a hunting dog on point. Clary followed the line of his gaze and saw the girl in the white dress. Oh well, Clary thought, trying not to feel like a deflated party balloon. I guess that's that. The girl was gorgeous, the kind of girl Clary would have liked to draw. Tall and ribbon slim, with a long spill of black hair. Even at this distance, Clary could see the red pendant around her throat. It pulsed under the lights of the dance floor like a separate, disembodied heart. I feel, Simon went on, that this evening DJ Bat is doing a signaturely exponential job. Don't you agree? Clary rolled her eyes and didn't answer. Simon hated trance music. Her attention was on the girl in the white dress. Through the darkness, smoke, and artificial fog, her pale dress shone out like a beacon. No wonder the blue-haired boy was following her, as if he were under a spell, too distracted to notice anything else around him. Even the two dark shapes, hard on his heels, weaving after him through the crowd. Clary slowed her dancing and stared. She could just make out that the shapes were boys, tall and wearing black clothes. She couldn't have said how she knew that they were following the other boy, but she did. She could see it in the way they paced him, their careful watchfulness, the slinking grace of their movements. A small flower of apprehension began to open inside of her chest. Meanwhile, Simon added, I wanted to tell you that lately I've been cross-dressing, so I'm sleeping with your mom. I thought you should know. The girl had reached the wall and was opening a door marked No Admittance. She beckoned the blue-haired boy after her, and they slipped through the door. It wasn't anything Clary hadn't seen before. A couple sneaking off to the dark corner of the club to make out, but that made it even weirder that they were being followed. She raised herself up on tiptoe, trying to see over the crowd. The two guys had stopped at the door and seemed to be conferring with each other. One of them was blonde, the other dark-haired. The blonde one reached into his jacket and drew out something long and sharp that flashed under the strobing lights. A knife. Simon, Clary shouted, and seized his arm. What? Simon looked alarmed. I'm not really sleeping with your mom. You know, I was just trying to get your attention. Not that your mom isn't a very attractive woman for her age. Do you see those guys? She pointed wildly, almost hitting a curvy back girl who was dancing nearby. The girl shot her an evil look. Sorry, Clary turned back to Simon. Do you see those guys over there by the door? Simon squinted, then shrugged. I don't say anything. There are two of them. They are following the guy with blue hair. The one you thought was cute? Yes, but that's not the point. The blonde one put out a knife. Are you sure? Simon stared at her harder, shaking his head. I still don't see anyone. I'm sure. Suddenly, oh business. Simon squared his shoulders. I'll get one of the security guards. You stay here. He strode away, pushing through the crowd. Clary turned just in time to see the blond boy slip through the no admittance door, and his friend right on his heels. She looked around. Simon was still trying to shove his way across the dance floor, but he wasn't making much progress. Even if she yelled now, no one would hear her. And by the time Simon got back, something terrible might already have happened. Biting hard on her lower lip, Clary started to wriggle through the crowd. What's your name? She turned and smiled. What faint light there was in the storage room spilled down through high barred windows, smeared with dirt. Piles of electric cables, along with broken bits of mirrored disco balls and discarded paint cans, littered the floor. Isabel. That's a nice name. He walked towards her, stepping carefully among the wires in case of any of them were alive. In the faint light, she looked half transparent, bleached of color, wrapped in white like an angel. It would be a pleasure to make her fall. I haven't seen you here before. You're asking me if I come here often? She giggled, covering her mouth with her hand. There was some sort of bracelet around her wrist, just under the cuff of her dress. Then as he neared her, he saw that it wasn't a bracelet at all, but a pattern, inked into her skin, a matrix of swirling lines. He froze. You. He didn't finish. She moved with lightning swiftness, striking out her arm with her open hand, a blow to his chest that would have sent him down gasping if he'd been a human being. He staggered back, and now there was something in her hand, a coiling whip that glinted gold, as she brought it down, curling around his ankles, jerking him off his feet. He hit the ground, writhing. He hated metal biting deep into his skin. She laughed, standing over him, and dizzily he thought that he should have known. No human girl would wear a dress like the one Isabel wore. She'd worn it to cover her skin, all of her skin. Isabel yanked hard on the whip, securing it. Her smile glittered like poisonous water. "He's all yours, boys," a low laugh sounding behind him. And now there were hands on him, hauling him upright, throwing him against one of the concrete pillars. He could feel the damp stone under his back. His hands were pulled behind him, his wrist bound with wire. As he struggled, someone walked around the side of the pillar. Into his view, a boy, as young as Isabel, and just as pretty. His 20 eyes glittered like chips of amber. "So," the boy said, "are there any more of you?" The blue-haired boy could feel blood welling up under the too tight metal, making his wrist slippery. "Any other what?" "Come on now." The 20-eyed boy held up his hands, and his dark sleeves slipped down, showing the runes inked all over his wrist, the back of his hands, his palms. "You know what I am." Far back inside his skull, the shackled boy's second set of teeth began to grind. "Shadow Hunter," he hissed. The other boy grinned all over his face. Blah, my bad. The other boy grinned all over his face. "Got you," he said. Clary pushed the door to the storage room open and stepped inside. For a moment she thought it was deserted. The only windows were high up and barred. Faint street noises came through them, and sounds of honking cars and squealing brakes. The room smelled like old paint, and a heavy layer of dust covered the floor, marked by smears of shoe prints. "There's no one here," she realized, looking around in bewilderment. It was cold in the room. Despite the August heat outside, her back was icy with sweat. She took a step forward, tangling her feet in electrical wires. She bent down to free her sneakers from the cables and heard voices. A girl's laugh, a boy entering sharply. When she straightened up, she saw them. It was as if they had sprung into existence between one blink of her eyes and the next. There was the girl in her long white dress, her black hair hanging down her like damp seaweed. The two boys were with her, one tall one with black hair like hers, and the smaller, fair one, whose hair gleamed like brass in the dim light. Coming through the windows, high above, the fair boy was standing with his hands in his pockets, facing the punk kid, who was tied to a pillar with what looked like piano wire. His hands stretched behind him, his legs bound at the ankles. His face was pulled tight with pain and fear. Heart hammering in her chest, Clary ducked behind the nearest concrete pillar and peered around it. She watched as the fair-haired boy paced back and forth, his arms now crossed over his chest. "So," he said, "you still haven't told me if there are any other of your kind with you." "Your kind?" Clary wondered what he was talking about. Maybe she'd stumbled into some kind of gang war? "I don't know what you're talking about." The blue-haired boy's tone was pained, but surely. "He means other demons," said the dark-haired boy, speaking for the first time. "Do you know what a demon is, don't you?" The boy, tied to the pillars, turned his face away, his mouth working. "Demons," drawled the blond boy, tracing the word on the air with his finger. Religiously defined as hell's denizens, the servants of Satan, but understood here for the purpose of the clave to be any malevolent spirit whose origins is outside our home dimension. "That's enough, Jace," said the girl. "Isabel's right," said the taller boy. "No one here needs a lesson on symmetrics or demonology." "They're crazy," Clary thought. "Actually crazy." Jace raised his hand and smiled. There was something fierce about the gesture, something that reminded Clary of documentaries she'd watched about lions on the Discovery Channel. The way the big cats would raise their heads and sniff the air for prey. "Isabel and Alec think I talk too much," he said confidently. "Do you think I talk too much?" The blue-haired boy didn't reply. His mouth was still working. "I could give you information," he said. "I know where Valentine is." Jace glanced back at Alec, who shrugged. "Valentine is in the ground," Jace said. "The thing's just toying with us." Isabel tossed her hair. "Kill it, Jace," he said. "It's not going to tell us anything." Jace raised his hand, and Clary saw dim light spark off the knife he was holding. It was oddly translucent, the blade clear as crystal, sharp as a shard of glass, the hilt set with red stones. The bound boy gasped. "Valentine is back," he protested, grabbing at the bonds that held his hands behind his back. "Oh, the infernal world knows it. I know it. I can tell you where he is." Rage flared suddenly in Jace's icy eyes. "By the angel, every time we capture one of you bastards, you claim you know where Valentine is. Well, we know where he is too. He's in hell. And you." Jace turned the knife in his grasp, the edge sparking like a line of fire. "You can join him there." Clary stood. I'm sorry. I keep messing up. Clary could take no more. She stepped out from behind the pillar. "Stop," she cried. "You can't do this." Jace whirled and startled that the knife flew from his hand and clattered against the concrete floor. Isabel and Alec turned along with him, wearing identical expressions of astonishment. The blue-haired boy hung in his bonds, stunned and gaping. It was Alec who spoke first. "What's this?" he demanded, looking from Clary to his companions as if they might know what she was doing there. "It's a girl," Jace said, recovering his composure. "Surely you've seen girls before, Alec. Your sister Isabel is one. He took a step closer to Clary, squinting, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. A Monday girl, he said, half to himself, and she can see us. Of course I can see you, Clary said. I'm not blind, you know. Oh, but you are, said Jace, bending to pick up his knife. You just don't know it yet. He straightened up. You'd better get out of here if you know what's good for you. I'm not going anywhere, Clary said. If I do, you'll kill him. She pointed at the boy with the blue hair. That's true, admitted Jace, swirling the knife between his fingers. What do you care if I kill him or not? But because, Clary spluttered, you can't just go around killing people. You're right, said Jace. You can't go around killing people. He pointed at the boy with blue hair, whose eyes were slitted. Clary wondered if he'd fainted. That's not a person, little girl. It may look like a person, talk like a person, and maybe even bleed like a person, but it's a monster. Jace, said Isabel warningly, that's enough. You're crazy, Clary said, backing away from him. I've called the police, you know. They'll be here any second. She's lying, said Alec, but there was doubt in his face. Jace, do you? He never got to finish his sentence. At the moment, the blue-haired boy with a high, yowling cry tore free from the restraints binding him to the pillar and flung himself on Jace. They fell to the ground and rolled together, the blue-haired boy tearing at Jace with hands that glittered as if tipped with metal. Clary backed up, wanting to run, but her feet caught on a loop of wiring, and she went down, knocking the breath out of her chest. She could hear Isabel shrieking. Rolling over, Clary saw the blue-haired boy sitting on Jace's chest, blood gleaming at the tips of his razor-like claws. Isabel and Alec were running toward them, Isabel brandishing a whip in her hand. The blue-haired boy slashed at Jace with claws extended. Jace threw an arm up to protect himself, and the claws raked it, splattering blood. The blue-haired boy lunged again, and Isabel's whip came down across his back. He shrieked and fell to the side, swift as a flick of Isabel's whip. Jace rolled over. There was a blade gleaming in his hand. He sank the knife into the blue-haired boy's chest. Blackish liquid exploded around the hilt. The boy arched off the floor, gurgling and twisting with a grimace. Jace stood up. His black shirt was blacker now in some places, wet with blood. He looked down at the twitching form at his feet, reached down and yanked out the knife. The hilt was slick with black fluid. The blue-haired boy's eyes flickered open. His eyes fixed on Jace seemed to burn. Between his teeth, he hissed, "So be it. The Forsaken will take you all." Jace seemed to snarl. The boy's eyes rolled back. His body began to jerk and twitch as he crumbled, folding in on himself, growing smaller and smaller until he vanished entirely. Clary scrambled to her feet, kicking free of the electrical wiring. She began to back away. None of them was paying attention to her. Alec had reached Jace and was holding his arm, pulling at the sleeve, probably trying to get a good look at the wound. Clary turned to run and found her way blocked by Isabel, whip in hand. The golden length of it was stained with dark fluid. She flicked it towards Clary, and the end wrapped around itself around her wrist and jerked tight. Clary gasped with pain and surprise. "Stupid little Monday," Isabel said between her teeth. "You could have gotten Jace killed." "He's crazy," Clary said, trying to pull her wrist back. The whip bit deeper into her skin. "You're all crazy. What do you think you are? Vigilante killers? The police?" "The police aren't usually interested, unless you can produce a body," said Jace, cradling his arm. He picked his way across the cable-strewn floor toward Clary. Alec followed behind him, face screwed into a scowl. Clary glanced at the spot where the boy had disappeared from and said nothing. There wasn't even a smear of blood there, nothing to show that the body had ever existed. "They return to their home dimension when they die," said Jace, "in case you were wondering." "Jace," Alec hissed, "be careful." Jace drew his arm away. A ghoulish freckling of blood marked his face. He still reminded her of a lion, with his wide-spaced, light-colored eyes and that tawny gold hair. "She can't see us, Alec," he said. "She already knows too much." "So what do you want me to do with her?" Isabel demanded. "Let her go," Jay said quietly. Isabel shot him a surprised, almost angry look, but didn't argue. The whip slithered away, freeing Clary's arm. She rubbed her sore wrist and wondered how the hell she was going to get out of here. "Maybe we should bring her back with us," Alex said. "I bet Hodage would like to see her." "No way we are bringing her back to the Institute," said Isabel. "She's a Monday." "Or is she?" said Jay softly. His quiet tone was worse than Isabel's snapping or Alex's anger. Have you had dealings with demons, little girl? Walked with warlocks? Talked with the Night Children? Have you?" "My name's not little girl," Clary interrupted, "and I have no idea what you're talking about." "Don't you?" said a voice in the back of her head. You saw that boy vanish into thin air. Jace isn't crazy. You just wish he was." "I don't believe in demons or whatever you..." "Clary?" It was Simon's voice. He whirled around. He was standing by the storage room door, my bad. One of the burly bouncers who'd been stamping hands at the front of the door next to him. "Are you okay?" He peered at her through the gloom. "Why are you by yourself? What happened to the guys? You know, the ones with the knives?" Clary stared at him, then looked around her where Jace, Isabel, and Alex stood. Jace, still in his bloody shirt with the knife in his hand, he grinned at her and dropped a half-apologetic, half-mocking shrug. Clearly, he wasn't surprised that neither Simon nor the bouncer could see them. Somehow, neither was Clary. Slowly, she turned back to Simon, knowing how she must look at him. Standing alone in a damn storage room, her feet tangled in bright plastic wiring cables. "I thought they would end here," she said lamely. "But I guess they didn't. I'm sorry." She glanced from Simon, whose expression was changing from worried to embarrassed, to the bouncer, who just looked annoyed. It was a mistake. Behind her, Isabel giggled. "I don't believe it," Simon said stubbornly. as Clary, standing at the curb, tried desperately to hold a cab. Street cleaners had come down Orchard while they were inside the club, and the street was glossed with oily water. I know, she agreed. You'd think there'd be some cabs. Where is everyone going at midnight on a Sunday? She turned back to him, shrugging. You think we'd have better luck on Houston? Not the cabs, Simon said. I don't believe you. I don't believe those guys with the knives just disappeared. Clary sighed. Maybe there weren't any guys with knives, Simon. Maybe I just imagined the whole thing. No way. Simon raised his hand over his head. No way, Simon said, his hand over his head. But the oncoming taxis whizzed by him, spraying dirty water. I saw your face when I came into the storage room. You look seriously freaked out, like you've seen a ghost. Clary thought of Jace with his lying cat eyes. She glanced down at her wrist, braceleted by a thin red line where Isabel's whip had curled. No, not a ghost, she thought. Something even weirder than that. It was just a mistake, she said wearily. She wondered why she wasn't telling him the truth, except of course that he'd think she was crazy. And there was something about what had happened, something about the black blood bubbling up around Jace's knife, something about his voice whenever he said, "Have you talked with the night children?" that she wanted to keep to herself. Well, it was a hell of an embarrassing mistake, Simon said. He glanced back at the club, where a thin line still snaked out of the door and halfway down the block. I doubt they'll ever let us back into Pandemonium. What do you care? You hate Pandemonium. Clary raised her hand again as a yellow shape sped towards them through the fog. This time, though, the taxi screeched to a halt at their corner. The driver leaned into his horn as if he needed to get their attention. Finally, we got lucky. Simon yanked the taxi door open and slid into the plastic-covered back seat. Clary followed, inhaling the familiar New York cab smell of old cigarettes, smoke, leather, and hairspray. "We're going to Brooklyn," Simon said to the cabbie, and then he turned to Clary. "Look, you know you can tell me anything, right?" Clary hesitated a moment, then nodded. "Sure, Simon," she said. "I know I can." She slammed the cab door shut behind her, and the taxi took off into the night. Chapter 2: Secrets and Lies. The dark prince sat astride his black steed, his stable cape flowing behind him. A golden circlet bounded his blond locks. His handsome face was cold with the rage of battle, and his arm looks like an eggplant, Clary muttered to herself in expression. The drawing just wasn't working. With a sigh, she tore yet another sheet from her sketchpad, crumpled it up, and tossed it again. The orange wall of her her bedroom, my bad. Already the floor was littered with discarded balls of paper, a sure sign that her creative juices weren't flowing the way that she'd hoped. She wished for the thousandth time that she could be a bit more like her mother. Everything Jocelyn Frey drew, painted, or sketched was beautiful and seemingly effortless. Clary pulled her headphones out, cutting off stepping razor in mid-song. My bad. Clary pulled out her headphones out, cutting off stabbing razor in mid-song, and rubbed her aching temples. It was only then that she became aware that the loud piercing sound of a ringing telephone was echoing through the apartment. Tossing the sketchpad into a bed, she jumped to her feet and ran into the living room, where the retro red phone sat on a table near the front door. "Is this Clarissa Frey?" The voice on the other end of the phone sounded familiar, though not immediately identifiable. Clary twirled the phone cord nervously around her finger. "Yes? Hi. I'm one of the knife-carrying hooligans you met last night in Pandemonium. I'm afraid I made a bad impression and was hoping you'd give me a chance to make it up." "Simon!" Clary had the phone away from her ear as he cracked up laughing. "That was so not funny." Sure it is. You just don't see the humor." "Jerk," Clary sighed, leaning up against the wall. "You wouldn't be laughing if you'd been where I got home last night." "Why not?" "My mom. She wasn't happy when we were late. She freaked out. It was messy." "What? It's not our fault there was traffic," Simon protested. He was the youngest of the two children and had a finely honed sense of familial injustice. "Yes, yeah, well, she doesn't see it that way. I disappointed her. I let her down. I made her worry. Blah, blah, blah. I'm the bane of her existence," Clary said, mimicking her mother's precise phrasing with only a slight twinge of guilt. "So, are you grounded?" Simon asked, a little too loudly. Clary could hear a low rumble of voices behind them, people talking over each other. "I don't know yet," she said. "My mom went out this morning with Luke. They were not back yet." "Where are you, anyway?" "Eric's?" "Yeah, we just finished up practice." A cymbal clashed behind Simon. Clary winced. "Eric's doing a poetry reading over at Java Jones tonight," Simon went on, naming a coffee shop around the corner from Clary's that sometimes had live music at night. "The whole band's going to go to show their support. Wanna come?" "Yeah, all right." Clary paused, tugging on the phone cord anxiously. "Wait, no." "Shut up, guys, will you?" Simon yelled. "Will you guys shut up?" Simon yelled, the faintness of his voice making Clary suspect that he was holding the phone away from his mouth. He was back a second later, sounding troubled. "Was that a yes or a no?" "I don't know." Clary bit her lip. "My mom's still mad at me about last night. I'm not sure I want to piss her off by asking for any favors. If I'm going to get in trouble, I don't want it to be on account of Eric's lousy poetry." "Come on, it's not that bad," Simon said. Eric was his next-door neighbor, and the two had known each other most of their lives. They weren't close the way Simon and Clary were, but they had formed a rock band together at the start of sophomore year, along with Eric's friend Matt and Kirk. They practiced together faithfully in Eric's parents' garage every week. "Besides, it's not a favor," Simon added. "It's a poetry slam around the block from your house. It's not like I'm inviting you to some orgy and Hog Hub Hub Hoboken. Blah. My bad. Let me say it over again. It's a poetry slam around the block from your house. It's not like I'm inviting you to some orgy in Hoboken. Your mom can come along if she wants. Orgy in Hoboken? Clary heard someone, probably Eric, yell. Another cymbal crashed. She imagined her mother listening to Eric's read his poetry, and she shuddered inwardly. I don't know if all. Blah. I'm not. I don't know if all of you show up here. I think she'll freak. Then I'll come along. I'll pick you up, and we can walk over there together. Meet the rest of them there. Your mom won't mind. She loves me. Clary had a laugh. Sign of her questionable taste, if you ask me. Nobody did. Simon clicked off, amid shouts from his classmates. Clary hung up the phone and glanced around the living room. Evidence of her mother's artistic tendencies was everywhere, from the handmade velvet throw pillows piled on the dark red sofa to the walls hung with Jocelyn's paintings, carefully framed, landscapes mostly. The winding streets of downtown Manhattan lit with gold lights. Senses of Prospect Park in winter. The gray ponds etched with lace-like films of white ice. On the mantel over the fireplace was a framed photo of Clary's father, a thoughtful-looking fair man in military dress. His eyes bore the telltale traces of laugh lines at the corners. He'd been a decorated soldier serving overseas. Jocelyn had some of his medals in a small box by her bed. Not that the medals had done anyone any good when Jonathan Clark had crashed his car into a tree outside Albany and died before his daughter was even born. Give me a second. Jocelyn had gone back to using her maiden name after he died. She never talked about Clary's father, but she kept the box engraved with his initials, J.C., next to her bed, along with the medals were one or two phones, a wedding ring, and a single lock of blonde hair. Sometimes Jocelyn took the box out and opened it and held the lock of hair very gently in her hands before putting it back and carefully locking the box up again. The sound of the key turning in the front door roused Clary out of her reverie of her thoughts. Hastily she threw herself down on the couch and tried to look as if she were immersed in one of the paper bags her mother had left stacked on the end table. Jocelyn recognized reading as a sacred pastime and usually wouldn't interrupt Clary in the middle of a book, even to yell at her. The door opened with a thump. It was Luke, his arms full of what looked like big square pieces of pasteboard. When he set them down, Clary saw that they were cardboard boxes, folded flat. He straightened up and turned to her with a smile. Hey, my bad. Hey, Luke, she said. He asked her to stop calling him Uncle Luke about a year ago, claiming that it made him feel old. And anyway, reminded him of Uncle Tom's cabin. Besides, he'd reminded her gently he wasn't really her uncle, just a close friend of her mother's, who'd known her all her life. Where's Mom? Parking the truck, he said, straining his lengthy frame with a groan. He had dressed in his usual uniform, old jeans, a flannel shirt, and a bent pair of gold-rimmed spectacles that sat anew on the bridges of his nose. Remind me again why this building has no service elevator? Because it's old and has character, Clary said immediately. Luke grinned. What are the boxes for? She asked. His grin vanished. Your mother wanted to pack up some things, he said, avoiding her gaze. What things? Clary asked. He gave an airy smile. My bad. He gave an airy wave. Extra stuff laying around the house, getting in the way. You know, she never throws anything out. So, what are you up to? Studying? He plucked the book out of her hand and read out, The road still teems with those mostly beings whom a more sober physiology has discarded. Fairies and goblins, ghosts and demons still hover about. He lowered the book and looked at her over his glasses. Is this for school? The golden bra. No, school's not for 2 weeks. Clary took the book from him. It's my mom's. I had a feeling. She dropped it back on the table. Luke? Uh-huh. The book already forgotten. He was rummaging in the toolbox. I'm so sorry. I'm just stumbling over words right now. Uh-huh. The book already forgotten. He was rummaging in the toolkit next to the hearth. Here it is. He picked out an orange plastic tape gun and gazed at it with deep satisfaction. What would you do if you saw something nobody else could see? The tape gun fell out of Luke's hand and hit the tilted hearth. He knelt to pick it up, not looking at her. You mean if I were the only witness to a crime, that sort of thing? No. I mean if there were other people around, but you were the only one who could see something, as if it were invisible to everyone but you. He hesitated, still kneeling, the dented tape gun gripped in his hand. I know it sounds crazy, Clary ventured nervously, but... He turned around, his eyes very blue behind the glasses, rested on her with a firm look of affection. Clary, you're an artist, like your mother. That means you see the world in ways that others people don't. It's your gift. You see the beauty and the horror in ordinary things. It doesn't make you crazy, just different. There's nothing wrong with being different. Clary pulled her legs up and rested her chin on her knees. In her mind's eye, she saw the storage room, Isabel's gold whip, the blue-haired boy convulsing in his death spasms, and Jace's tawny eyes. Beauty and horror, she said. If my dad had lived, do you think he'd have been an artist too? Luke looked taken aback before he could answer. The door swung open, and Clary's mother stalked into the room, her boot heels clacking on the polished wooden floor. She handed Luke a set of jiggling car keys and turned to look at her daughter. Jocelyn Frey was a slim, compact woman, her hair a few shades darker than Clary's, and twice as long. At the moment, it was twisted up in a dark red knot, stuck through with a graphite pin to hold it in place. She wore paint-spattered overalls over a lavender t-shirt and brown hiking boots, whose soles were cracked with oil paint. People always told Clary that she looked like her mother, but she couldn't see it herself. The only thing that was similar about them was their figures. They were both slender, with small chests and narrow hips. She knew she wasn't beautiful, like her mother was. To be beautiful, you had to be willowy and tall. When you were as short as Clary was, just over 5 feet, you were cute. Not pretty or beautiful, but cute. Thrown in carroty hair and a face full of freckles, and she was a Raggedy Ann to her mother's Barbie doll. Jocelyn even had a graceful way of walking that made people turn their heads to watch her go by. Clary, by contrast, was always tripping over her feet. The only time people turned to watch her go by was when she hurtled past them as she fell downstairs. "Thanks for breaking the boxes up," Clary's mother said to Luke, and smiled at him. He didn't return the smile. Clary's stomach did an uneasy flip. Clearly there was something going on. "Sorry it took me so long to find a space. There must be a million people at the park today." "Mom," Clary interrupted, "what are the boxes for?" Jocelyn bit her lip. Luke flinches his eyes toward Clary, mutely urging Jocelyn forward. With a nervous twitch of her wrist, Jocelyn pushed a dangling lock of hair behind her ear and went to join her daughter in the couch. Up close, Clary could see how tired her mother looked. There were dark half-moons under her eyes, and her lids were pearly with sleeplessness. "Is this about last night?" Clary asked. "No," her mother said quickly, and then hesitated. "Maybe a little. You shouldn't have done what you did last night. You know better. And I already apologized. What is this about? If you're grounding me, I get it over with." "I'm not," said her mother. "Grounding you." Her voice was as taut as wire. She glanced at Luke, who shook his head. "Just tell her, Jocelyn," he said. "Could you not talk about me like I'm not here?" Clary said angrily. "And what do you mean? Tell me what?" Jocelyn expelled a sigh. "We're going on vacation." Luke's expression went blank, like a canvas wiped clean of paint. Clary shook her head. "That's what this is about? You're going on vacation?" She sank back on the cushions. "I don't get it. What a big production." "I don't think you understand. I mean we're all going on vacation. The three of us. You, me, Luke. We're going to the farmhouse." "Oh." Clary glanced at Luke, but he had his arms crossed over his chest and was staring out the window, his jaw pulled tight. She wondered what was upsetting him. He loved the old farmhouse in upstate New York. He'd bought and restored it himself 10 years before, and he went there whenever he could. "For how long?" "For the rest of the summer," said Jocelyn. "I brought the boxes in case you want to pack up any books, painting supplies." "For the rest of the summer?" Clary sat upright with indigestion. "I can't do that, Mom. I have plans. Simon and I were going to have a back-to-school party, and I've got a bunch of meetings with my art group and 10 more classes at Tish's. I'm sorry about Tish's, but the other things can be canceled. Simon will understand." and so will your art group. Clary heard the implic blah, implic I'm going to skip that word. I cannot pronounce it. I'm sorry. Clary heard what her mother said. Clary heard the in her mother's tone and realized she was serious. But I paid for those art classes. I saved up all year. You promised, she roared, turning to Luke. Tell her this isn't fair. Luke didn't look away from the window, though a muscle jumped in his cheek. She's your mother. It's her decision to make. I don't get it. Clary turned back to her mother. Why? I have to get away, Clary, Jocelyn said, corners of her mouth trembling. I need the peace, the quiet, to paint, and money is tight right now. So sell some of Dad's stocks, Clary said angrily. That's what you usually do, isn't it? Jocelyn recoiled. That's hardly fair. Look, go if you want to. I don't care. I'll stay here without you. I can work. I can get a job at Starbucks or something. Simon said they're always hiring. I am old enough to take care of myself. No. The sharpness in Jocelyn's voice made Clary jump. I'll pay you back for the art classes, Clary. But you are coming with us. It isn't optional. You're too young to stay here on your own. Something could happen. Like what? What could happen? Clary demanded. There was a crash. She turned in surprise to find that Luke had knocked over one of the framed pictures leaning against the wall. Looking distinctly upset, he set it back. When he straightened, his mouth was set in a grim line. I'm leaving. Jocelyn bit her lip. Wait. She hurried after him into the entryway, catching up just as he seized the doorknob, twisting around the sofa. Clary could just overhear her mother's urgent whisper. Bane, Jocelyn was saying. I've been calling him for the past 3 weeks. His voicemail says he's in Tanzania. What am I supposed to do? Jocelyn. Luke shook his hand. You can't keep going at him forever. But Clary isn't Jonathan. Luke hissed. You've never been the same since it happened. But Clary isn't Jonathan. What does this have to do with my father? What does my father have to do with this? Clary thought, bewildered. I can't just keep her at home. Not let her go out. She won't put up with it. Of course she won't. Luke sounded very angry. She's not a pet. She's a teenager, almost an adult. If we were out of the city, talk to her, Jocelyn. Luke's voice was firm. I mean it. He reached for the doorknob. The door flew open. Jocelyn gave out a little scream. Jesus! Luke exclaimed. Actually, it's just me, said Simon. Although I've been told the resemblance is startling. He waved at Clary from the doorway. You ready? Jocelyn took her hand away from her mouth. Simon, were you eavesdropping? Simon blinked. No, I just got here. He looked from Jocelyn's pale face to Luke's grim one. Is there something wrong? Should I go? Don't bother, Luke said. I think we're done here. He pushed past Simon, thudding down the stairs at a rapid pace. Downstairs, the front door slammed shut. Simon hovered in the doorway, looking uncertain. I can come back later, he said. Really, it wouldn't be a problem. That might, Jocelyn began, but Clary was already on her feet. Forget it, Simon, we're leaving, she said. Grabbing her messenger bag from a hook near the door, she slung it over her shoulder, glared at her mother. See you later, Mom. Jocelyn bit her lip. Clary, don't you think we should talk about this? We'll have plenty of time to talk while we're on vacation, Clary said venomously, and had the satisfaction of seeing her mother flinch. Don't wait up, she added, and grabbing Simon's arm, she half dragged him out of the front door. He dug his heels in, looking apologetically over his shoulder at Clary's mother, who stood small and forlorn in the entryway, her hands knitted tightly together. Bye, Miss Frey, he called. Have a nice evening. Oh, shut up, Simon, Clary snapped, slamming the door behind them, cutting off her mother's reply. And that is where I'm going to end on part 1 to this. Give me a second. Let me put this book holder right here. But yeah, that's where I'm going to end it. This has been going on for an hour. So yeah, I hope you like this first episode. This is gonna be part. Should I make this part 0, part 1? I'm gonna make this part 1. No, part 0, like I usually do in every single one of my series. This is gonna be part 0. So yeah, this is gonna be part 0 of the moral instruments, and I hope you liked it. Just don't mind me about my stumbling on my words and couldn't pronounce some of the words in the book, but I did my best, and I really enjoyed doing this. I really enjoyed it. Tell me how you feel about what I did in the comment section, and tell me if you want a part 1 to be out, and I will immediately put it out after I'll go between this and what if Femdeku had neon. If you want me to do that, and I'll do it. I'll fucking do it. If you want more of the moral instruments, please tell me in the comment section, and like this. And like this story or book. And without further ado, I hope you all have a good day or night, wherever your time zone is in the world. And peace out, my monster family.